Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Tom. This is James. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about how he went from his 9 to 5 to being a Bitcoin investor. And we talk about crypto, we talk about life, we talk about different books we read. Enjoy the episode.
I love this idea that like time travel, teleportation, AI, they're all science fiction ideas. People were writing about this stuff decades, maybe 100 years ago, maybe before that. And now we're living through like the realization of these things, like we're doing it with science. I just think it's cool. What's fiction, science fiction can become science fact.
Maybe just fiction is just stuff that hasn't been proven yet. If it's an idea, then the possibility is there that we can make it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think I heard someone say, he said, the idea or the desire to do something is the power within you to be able to do it.
And desire that you have is the power within you to do it.
Yeah. So if there isn't any desire for it, then you don't have it. But if there is desire for it, that's direct showing you that you can do it. Sort of.
Yeah. See, that's the struggle with corporate 9 to 5 work is whatever reasons lead you into that. I think rarely they are the actual desire to be there in an office 9 to 5 or even remote from your home, being part of like a corporate community, doing a bunch of emailing people back and forth. I think a lot of people do that without the desire to do it. I think it's very hard to be successful in the corporate world for a lot of people who, or at least speaking for other people, but for me, it was difficult to drive myself and continue wanting to show up and be there.
To find that inner desire to work for someone else. Can you tell me a bit more about the time when you were working for ITEA and where the change happened?
I was working as a consultant, so I was the product for the company. You know, that was selling my time and effort to other companies. I quickly discovered that though going in through the graduate program, which I did, it's all a lot of discussion about, you know, your growth as a person and your career and your future and everything. And they do try and give you those supports around it. And I think you need it. Like, I think it's a really good way to go to like start off in a career because you learn so many great things like work communication and all that sort of stuff. But after time, it becomes kind of apparent that it is only you driving your career forward. And like, for example, it turned out that the sector I was working in, the best way to get a raise was to change jobs.
Really?
Which kind of sucks, right? Because I think maybe there was a time where, with the cost of living and everything, you just stay in a job, and you weren't really driven to keep upping your pay. But yeah, at least in IT consulting, the best way to get a raise was to leave the job and go to a different one.
Is that just leverage your position to another company or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much. Because internally, like if you're just going to your boss and saying, "Hey, I think it's time for a raise for me," they'll come back with a million reasons why you need to do a whole bunch of this and that to get there, and now it's not the right time for that change to your salary. It's just so easy to go to a new company and say, what do you guys need?
Your desire wasn't for a raise, right? You had a different idea.
Initially, I was very inspired by the process that I learned through university and the graduate program, this process of design. That really inspired me to go out there and do this work. But eventually over time, like in the corporate environment, it was just so, that it was not meaningful design that I was doing. It was just helping people move like a insurance upgrade to a different page of the letter to the customer so that the customer would be less offended that their insurance premium has gone up. I think not really nice design decisions. At that point, I was like, well, I'm not really enjoying the work. And supposedly I'm supposed to do more of the work to level up. The other part was I also got to a position where I was I would be in front of the client leading my team from the consultancy. The next stage to start to go from a team lead to like a manager or a director role, I needed to be then selling work. So finding more clients and creating more projects and more revenue for the company. And I didn't want to do that stuff. So it just did like the proportion of pay increase compared to the proportion of work without desire, because I did not desire to get to know other corporations and other people in corporate community. I hated it. Yeah. I grew up in a place like this, like a rural area with nature around me, and just small quality connections with people, with a small group of people, and corporate's the opposite. It's a very dry environment. Even if you're sitting in the comfort of your bedroom on a Zoom call and your laptop, it's you're just looking at these innumerable people as you move around as a consultant. So I was like, okay, well, I don't see a path forward here. I'm not going to do all this sales work and whatever it is to keep climbing up from manager to director to CEO of one of these consulting companies. It wasn't my path. So I just kind of started looking at mining efficiency from my time. If I can't get a raise in dollar terms, maybe I can create my own raise in time terms, doing the week's work in less time, so that my effective dollar per hour rate went up. Which it was so easy to do. I think a lot of people do this type of stuff. A lot of corporate work ends up being just sending emails, which is crazy.
Just sending emails.
In the IT consulting world where I came from, it was shooting a bunch of emails around and then creating presentation decks and presenting those and then on to the next job. So many people who live that way, and that's their product. That's what they contribute to the world.
Yeah, I see that a lot in cities, right? When you look around and you're like, what are we doing here? Oh,
yeah.
What is really our...
It's super weird. It gets even weirder when, with the advent of AI and the capability to just automate a lot of that work.
That's true.
In fact, a lot of the IT work I did was towards designing the automation of communication. Couldn't count how many financial services, insurance services jobs I did where I'd go in and essentially, if you broke it down, the brief was kind of like, look, we've got like a customer call center that's doing a bunch of stuff and we'd like to kind of not have them. We'd rather the website do their work. How can we design the website so that we don't have so many customer service people?
Because that would be cheaper, right? Having less people on there.
Yep. So chatbots and just automation and...
You started optimizing your hours to create, because what's the essential goal? Like, I just want more time with my family. What was the trigger, the goal, would you say?
I mean, the trigger was really, to me, the unpleasantness of corporate life. I didn't enjoy being in a corporation, so the less time I had to contact with them, the better. But you never really escape it, because that's the thing about corporate work is it's a lot of thought work. And so you'll be laying in bed at night and you're thinking about whatever things you're working on there. It's sort of hard to separate it from it sometimes if you're predisposed to that. But I think the inspiration for me was sort of like, well, there must be something else I can do that I would enjoy more. And I've always been of the belief that, like you said before, if your desire is the energy to do something, I think it's just more efficient. I love efficiency. Like all through my life, I feel like I'm just constantly obsessed with finding efficiencies and things. And I think the ultimate efficiency is to be doing something you love. I think probably the first bit of work I feel like I loved, that I went into that flow state where just hours disappeared, was drawing. And I think if your work can drive you into that flow state, that's the ultimate thing. I don't think I've really found that yet. I had little bits of it through the IT career. There was like parts of the job where you could get into that flow state, and that was really fun. But most of the job was not like that.
Yeah, you can count it on your fingers when it happens, where you just zone into something and just really engulfed into it. When you started optimizing your work, that's what you did, right? You have the same amount of work. You weren't shooting for promotion, but you were optimizing how much time it would take to do the same amount of work to have more time free.
A big mantra in my life, once I snagged onto this mantra, my life just seemed to accelerate, was mentors make shit happen. And I just had so many mentors who I got to go into work with who showed me quicker ways of doing things that I was spending a lot of time doing. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, it's those sort of shortcuts and learning what's important and what's important to pay attention to and what's just a bit of busy work. But without those mentors, I might not have been able to find those efficiencies. If I found them, it would have taken a longer time to find it on my own. But I had this career. I started mid-2016 and I was out by 2021. It's not a lot of time, but the mentors that I met along the way, who were my leaders in a project and on a team, I just saw them throw away a lot of things that I thought were important, that I was taught were important steps you need to take. Yeah. And I guess once I sort of started to see that process, you can find ways to make this more efficient without, degrading the result too much. Then I just kind of carried away with finding more of that.
How did you select your mentors?
Well, they just kind of fall into your lap, I guess. I went after a few mentors, people I saw, and I'd email them, and I'd be like, "Oh, can we catch up something? Can I pick your brains? Can I buy a coffee and just ask you about your career?" Did a couple of those things, and they don't always turn into something. every
get
now and
little
then.
snippets of a bit of information, and
Yeah.
you build from there.
Yeah, build from there. And I found job opportunities through that, of course. Also going to the old networking events, which I avoided like the plague for a long time. But then when I began to find this niche in IT that I really liked, or this niche in design, it was easy to go to those things because I was quite interested in that process, that design process. I met some people there that helped me find the job where I sort of had a bit of success, and met more people who were even better at the work, the design process work, than the original mentor. And a lot of it's fate. If those people weren't there at that company,
would have gone differently. So for optimizing your time, what would you say is the three main things that help optimize your time?
Well, I think everyone's different. For me, I have a very strong sense of responsibility, so it's difficult for me to find priorities because I tend to put too much importance on everything. To-do lists are huge for me. I had this app called Trello, and now I just use the to-do list app on my iPhone. I find that helps me prioritize. So if I just put all the things down, it takes a bit of load off my mind, and then I start sorting them and putting them, the highest priority thing to the top, down to the lowest priority. I also thought about things in terms of that grid of like urgent and important, non-urgent but important, not urgent, not important, and important, unurgent. If I got those right. Separating those things into those squares is pretty cool. And what you find from that exercise is that you spend so much time doing urgent, important things that you neglect the non-urgent but important things. And so you get to the realization like, gosh, when am I going to make time for the not urgent but important things? Because they're the things that matter in the long term. For example, it's not urgent for me to go and do a workout today, but it's important in a year from now to be important that I maintain my routine of doing workouts. How can I do that? Make more time in the morning, get up a little bit earlier to go and do that.
That's very good. So that's besides having your to-do list, also put everything that you have to do. It's on your mind. Put them in the four
in a matrix of importance. There's probably other things I was thinking about at the time, but I think even just having that mental model and looking at something and be like, well, I want to say that that's not urgent right now, but if I don't do it right now, there's a bunch of urgent things that'll take precedence over it, so I'll do it now. I guess it helps to bust procrastination a bit. So there's two things there. There's the to-do list. That's probably one thing, is to-do list and severity matrix or importance matrix for optimizing time.
How quick were you able to get it down to 4 hours compared to 8?
Yeah, probably 4 hours in a week, which is pretty crazy. And it was inconsistent because in the type of project-based work I would do, there'd be deadlines where I have to deliver stuff. So in the final week of the project, I tend to be doing a lot of work. But in the earlier weeks and in the weeks between projects and things when I'm just doing business as usual stuff, it was so easy to get the time down. Turning stuff off, getting emails off of my phone. I mean, these are all things that were privileges of the fact that I had driven my career to a point where I was earning enough to be comfortable. I didn't need to progress the career and put more work into it. I'd already done that part. I'd had to skip ahead in my career, which we could talk about changing jobs.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty important. Every 2 years, change jobs so you can in that sector, so you can keep leveling up and putting yourself ahead of your skills, so you're not just sitting there doing more work than you're being paid for, because and also not being challenged. But there's one more optimization thing I wanted to point out, and that's that Pareto rule of what's the 20% of work that'll get 80% of the results. That's a huge one. Just focusing on those first things that will get you most of the way, and then having the self-control to say 80% is good enough, and just rinsing your hands of things, because I think we waste a lot of time trying to get things to 100% when no one's looking for that 100%. The 80% is good enough.
That's a very good one. So if you would say optimize, know what you have to do, know how important it is that you have to do it in, or if it's something that has to be done now or later, long term.
The Pareto rule, 80%. What's the 20% gets you 80% of the results?
It's the Pareto rule?
Yeah, Pareto, Pareto.
Pareto rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it works for a lot of things, huh? Pareto.
Works for heaps of things. Works for everything. Yeah.
Because it was a total amount of 4 hours a week of work, or was it per day?
Well, a week. There were some weeks where I did 4 hours, and it was a unique situation where I'm working remotely, so no one's I'm not having to do busy work to show anyone that I'm doing stuff. I had a lot of the tools that I would use to do the job. I already had templates and things set up. So I'd go to a new job and I'd be like, well, these are all, I've already got the templates for it. I just need to make a few changes to adapt to what's the required outcomes for this job. Having team members and being able to delegate things to them sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Some team members need a lot more mentoring and coaching to be able to do the work that's required. Yeah, it's a pretty unique position. I don't know. Well, I think in IT it's pretty common actually. I think a lot of people find those efficiencies. I just thought of something a mentor told me, and when I heard that they just said it offhand, I was like, oh damn, that's an idea. That was like a tipping point. I was like, oh okay. So the people who are ahead of me in the career track and where I would like to be, that's what they're doing. They're using these efficiencies and things. They're thinking about things in terms of what's the 20% to get 80% of the results, and what's the most important thing, just focus on that.
What was the first thing you started studying then, to like in the free time you created?
What did I study? Trading. I buggered around with making an algorithm to do trading for me. There's a bot service you could buy and do trades.
Yeah.
That was just on paper. That didn't really amount to anything. After that, I started learning about qualitative analysis. What's that stuff called when you draw on the charts? What's that? Technical analysis.
Oh, technical.
So I did that TA stuff where you're drawing lines and things, and I eventually figured out that if you just change the aspect ratio of your chart, then it all falls apart and it's just pretty drawings. Like, think about technical analysis like reading tea leaves in the bottom of a cup.
Yeah.
Just ways of making you feel good about what's happening. I don't know how.
Because you're looking at a small scale.
Yeah. I don't think it's too reliable. They say like 99% of day traders lose money in the market or something. I don't know. That didn't amount to too much, but you learn things along the way. And then the NFT thing came along. So I learned about that and I got involved in an NFT gaming project. That was very fruitful. So I got to get in early on that technology, understand what it was, have fun with it, because I'm a video gamer, I love video games. And so it was, again, searching for that desire and flow and that nexus of, where's some work where I'm going to enjoy it. And I ended up doing some design work for that project. It didn't really amount to anything, but it was a good gain on the investment that I put in there.
Because you sold it at the right time then as well? Or?
Well, as always, I wish I'd sold a whole lot more, but yes, I did make profit, much profit on my investment relative to other assets like stocks and property and whatever. Amazing amounts of profit, like 10x my money.
Oh, wow.
The proportion that I sold, but not all. In fact, there was a funny point where I had more NFT, I had more net worth in NFT property than I had in real property. And I owned a house at that point, but the equity I had in the house was dwarfed by like 500% of the NFT property I had. And when I say NFT property, I don't mean like I had some NFTs. I mean that in the video game, they sold plots of property, and I bought those plots in an auction as they went live, and then they very quickly went to, a huge number. I think it was like 6 figures, verging on 7. And now those property is probably worthless.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, it's 2024 and no one gives a shit about NFTs anymore. So I sold some of them and realized a profit, but goddamn, I should have sold them all and paid off my mortgage with it.
But that's it. Do you sometimes think back on that? It's like, how do you deal with like, I should have sold more, and like that type of thinking? That's like everything you just do.
Oh, it haunts you. It haunts you, those things. I just wanted to get away from it for a few years. So I eventually sold all of my crypto, and I've spent just the last 2 years not really involved in crypto at all. And of course, naturally, I've come to regret that massively as the market has recovered. But it's been kind of nice to take that off my mind, because the funny thing about the career is that I made my initial investment in crypto before I had an IT career. The IT career was almost a distraction and occupying 5 or 6 years in the 7, 8, 9 years that I was in crypto. So I was mowing lawns, spending just a few $100s on crypto, and eventually that turned into, 9 years later, the thing that enabled me to buy my own home and change my life. And then it was just the IT career was almost a bit of a distraction, something to do in the middle. So I quit my IT job because I felt very rich on crypto, and then the market went down. I didn't feel rich on crypto, and I was like, I can't handle this. I'm out. I'm ahead, so I'm out, and I sold. And then it was like, okay, what's the next journey? I don't want it to be a crypto journey. I don't want it to be a corporate journey. I want it to be something different that's me, that's easy for me to have the desire to do. And so, yeah, I think that's jiu-jitsu. That's over 2 years. That was the best I could come up with anyway. So throwing myself at that, and I enjoy it. It's definitely not, doesn't remunerate as well as crypto, but who knows? But might be another angle to it that I haven't seen yet. So I'm just keep throwing myself at it because I think the thing that whenever I look back and I think like, I regret I did this, I regret I did that, the common hindsight thought I have is if I had really focused on what I enjoyed so much at the time, I think good things would have come out of that. So now that I have the budget to allow myself some time to sort of bugger around and do different things, I'm sort of investing in myself to go in and do something I really enjoy, which is jiu-jitsu.
Would you call that searching for ikigai as well? Do you know?
Yeah, ikigai. Yeah, I looked at that. I saw this awesome documentary that just tipped me over the scale to do it. It was I think it got pulled from YouTube, which is such a shame for copyright stuff because it was using a lot of UFC footage. But have you seen Jiri Prohaska, the light heavyweight champion of the world for some time, UFC fighter? He's not Polish, he's not Ukrainian. He is from some Eastern European country. It's a shame I don't remember. He might be Polish. Anyway, this dude, they call him it says Polish. He'd probably hate me call it Polish if he's not. He's Czechoslovakian. I think they call him like the Czechoslovakian samurai or whatever. And he lives like a samurai. He's got a samurai haircut. Someone gave him the Book of Five Rings at some point in his life. You know the Book of Five Rings?
Actually, no.
Okay, so this is how we got here from like Ikigai. The Book of Five Rings was written by this guy called Miyamoto Musashi, who was this medieval period Japanese samurai who famously won like every sword fight in his whole career. He just went around the country challenging people to duels and beat every single one of them. Eventually retired to a mountain to meditate on his life. And in that meditation, he wrote a book called The Five Rings. And it's about the 5 rings of swordsmanship. So how to become the world's greatest swordsman like he did. And it's a popular book in business because all the principles that he wrote about can be applied to life, business, any sort of career or any sort of craft or pursuit. So anyway, this Jiri Prohaska guy, he got this book of the 5 rings and he sort of lives his life like that as a samurai in the UFC cage. And so I made this excellent documentary about it and I watched it. I was like, yes. And I loved so much about it. I've always been interested in combat and war and things. So that really resonated with me. But yeah, I think Ikigai is like, I don't think you can pursue the path of the 5 rings without Ikigai because it says something like, don't learn the sword unless you plan to use it. Don't learn the sword unless you plan to use it. Might be don't draw the sword unless you plan to use it. Don't study the art of swordsmanship unless you are going to use it. There's something in there that has to do with this idea of like desire and like your path in life and career and your art.
It's like what we just said about having that desire is the ability in you to do it. So it's like if you don't have the desire to like use the sword, why study the sword? Because then it's not there.
Yeah, exactly. I relate that to my life. Like I look at why did I study a degree in business? Because I wanted to be rich. But that's not really what the business degree was about. The business degree was about working in corporations. I did not desire to work in corporations, though I didn't know. So, replace swordsmanship with corporate work. And it's like, don't study corporate work if you don't want to be in a corporation.
Yeah. Yeah, I like looking at that because I have the same desire, right? Get rich. But I like looking at it as who do I have to become that is able to do this thing to get rich? And that feels a lot more because that's the journey and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So then
I think I read in one of those Rich Dad, Poor Dads or Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, one of those books about wealth that said something like, you don't need to focus on the wealth. When wealth comes, it comes so easily. The real work is in finding your path and finding the thing that you are good at, the ikigai. What is it? What you love, what you're good at.
What you can make money of, I think.
Yeah.
What it's only with creative as well.
Yeah, I can't remember all the ikigai parts.
I think it's also 5 parts or something, right? Or
it might be like 3 or 4 rings that are sort of intersecting. But there's definitely some truth, I think, in the idea that when the money comes, it comes easily and it comes quickly. The hard work is in, forging yourself into the person that you desire to be,
Yeah.
and then finding a way to get money, get paid to
do so.
do that work.
And one of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, you like that book?
But Think and Grow Rich is based off the science of getting rich, and that one is even better. Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
These are really old books then, because Think and Grow Rich was very old, right?
The Science of Getting Rich is published in 1907. Yeah, it's I probably read it like 30, 40 times.
That's crazy.
So I almost know it by heart.
I think you're going to get very rich one day.
I mean, that's the plan. One of the things they say in there that correlates with sort of that vision, or like becoming like the thing that you want to focus on, like that fits within the ikigai, is you have to do the daily action every day to get, because the thing that's coming, that's always there. It's just coming along. And when the opportunity comes, you just have to have work to receive it. Let's say you come along, you have $1 million, you want to buy something. I just have to do the work to give you the product.
Yeah.
It's like, here it is. It's like, thank you for the million. But I've done it. I've made it. I've blown it. I've sort of created this glass, for instance. And then it's like, that's sort of the, but then combined with the ikigai, of course.
Yeah.
I really like that sort of perspective of doing the work first and then having trust that it comes along.
Maybe it's just being idealistic, but I'm of the opinion that those rings happen in somewhat of a order of priority. And without the ring of desire and passion for the area, you're not going to make your way through the other rings to the receiving wealth for what it is you're doing. Or at least it won't be sustainable. For me, it wasn't sustainable to stay in the corporate world and try and make my money through that way, because the desire just burned out.
Did you get excited though from like crypto, from your first investments and stuff?
Oh yeah, I got so excited. Too excited. I think, everyone talks about the down, like the pitfalls of coming down in the market when everything's falling, when the sky's falling in crypto and everyone's selling. It's well recognized that that's the time to be greedy and buy and whatever.
Yeah.
The really hard thing, I think it's so much more difficult, and people don't talk about enough, is how difficult it is to sell when you feel like the smartest person on earth for having just held this asset to the point where it's appreciated so much, and everyone's talking about it, and you're in before a lot of the people you're speaking to, so you feel quite good, and it becomes about your feelings of accomplishment, and you forget the point was to use that wealth to change your life.
Do you think at that point the importance of having your buy and sell strategy in place?
Yeah. You need something to hold you accountable in those times. I was very fortunate. Like, I almost entirely screwed it up in the last cycle. I got talked out of using my strategy to a degree by a friend. So I decreased the amount of my assets, of my crypto that I had in this strategy, but still there was enough in there to make a really meaningful change in my life, which I'm so grateful for. But yeah, it was just, I think it has to be a good one. Obviously, the strategy has to be time tested and proven and work. And yeah, I was lucky to find that. I found it through YouTube. I was just going through YouTube, and there's 2019, there was probably 1% of the crypto channels that there are today, probably less. And I found this one guy, Ben Cowan. He had this risk adjusted strategy for buying in and selling out of the market. And yeah, I persisted with that strategy long enough to get the results I wanted. And then I did the age-old mistake of abandoning the strategy and stepped away from it. But now I'm back in. I should never have stopped that strategy. It's still working for now. Maybe one day it'll stop working, but I'm back in now. So I'm not in crypto. I'm completely out of crypto. But when there's another market tank, and like a real big one, I'll wind the strategy up again, just start averaging into the market and just start to build the portfolio again.
Because the main essence of that strategy is understanding that Bitcoin is built upon these cycles, right?
You know what? I think it might actually not include cycle theory.
Really? Is it just only focus on buying on like undervalue to like?
He doesn't make available what's in the formula, but I think it's just a bunch of TA stuff, moving averages. Gosh, look, you're testing my memory here because it's been 2 years since I've been in the, like, where I was watching this stuff religiously. Every morning I'd be watching hours of this Ben Cowan's videos trying to understand how he looked at the market. But what I remember is that there's a bunch of indicators, technical analysis things out there that you can see on any chart. But he's combined a lot of the quantitative ones into this one risk metric, which goes from 0 to, let's say, 100%. When you look at it, so high risk is obviously that 100%, and it's a big spike, and it looks like 4-year cycles. So you see one in, I think, is it 2011, 14, 17, 21,
Something like
and
that.
another one, something like that. So you look at it and you go, oh yeah, there's 4-year cycles, but there's a bit more to it than that, which I unfortunately don't have in my brain ready to recall. But the point of it is that it's time tested, so it's, you retrospectively look, and reliably every time that it got near that 100% mark. In fact, a better way to think about it, I believe, is every time it went over 60%, you had a matter of weeks, months, if not weeks, to get out of the market, because it was going to hit 100%, then it was going to go all the way back down to like 20, 30% risk. And in Bitcoin terms, that is, like a $1 Bitcoin going to 100 or 1,000 and then back down to just a few dollars. Or most recently, going up to $60,000, $70,000 and then back down to, in 2022, back down to like 15, 20 grand or something. So huge opportunities to take advantage of. But if you're just looking at it in terms of price, and then maybe only looking at it from a few frames of reference, like, every 4 years. Well, it's about 4 years now. Do I sell? Do I buy? It's not enough context.
I've been reading a little bit of Warren Buffett's letters. His partner letters. They're wonderful. And the main thing that I got out is he buys a lot of undervalued companies. So it's like sort of sale. You buy just the stock on a sale price. I almost see the same correlation with Bitcoin, that when compared to how high it is now, like now it's all-time high.
Yeah.
So that means it's overvalued, or maybe good value, but not good enough to buy for, but good for selling.
Yep.
And then when it goes down again, then just the lower it gets, because that's certain percentages you start buying again, right? From a certain point you do this much, and then the lower it gets, the more percentage, the bigger amounts you're trying to buy.
Yeah, so I see these, if you imagine a chart, and you've got time going this way and price sort of over 10 years going up, but then zooming in with the risk metric on the other side, so you can see 0 to 100%, you can see that it only goes down to that 20, 30% thing, and then it starts to build up again. But once it goes past 80%, between 80 to 100%, it's there for a matter of days before it drops off, and you eventually over time will find that 20, 30%. And I think about like pyramids of your allocation of dollars in that. So down in the 20 to 30% region, when the market's really cool and no one's interested in Bitcoin at all, I see, like, as you're dropping out of 30% into 20%, you're sort of taking that. So say you break up your pyramid into 15ths. The top of the pyramid is 1/15. The second part of the pyramid is 2/15, 3/15, 4/15, 5/15. And so if you're lucky to get all the way to, on this risk metric, get down to 20%, and you have invested, 2/3 of your capital, and you've got 1/3 of your capital left, that's your point where you go all in with the money you have allocated to the market, and then you just ride it. You wait for it to get up to that 60, 70% mark. That's when you start noticing, okay, well, we're in the 70% mark in history over time, over the last 4 cycles, however many it is. Data says that usually the pattern is that it will have a blow off top up to 100%. And that's where you have the inverted pyramid. So in this pyramid, it's, say we get the 60% risk mark, 1/15 off the table, take some profits on that. Goes higher, 20%. Sorry, if it goes higher, 2/15, 3/15, 4/15, 5/15, so on. Being a bit less greedy than the next man, so not waiting for it to go all the way to 100%.
Not sell everything.
Yeah, not waiting for these pie in the sky numbers that you hear everyone talking. Just have your number of accountability, which for me was 80%. It was like at 80%, if I can have everything out of the market by then, leave the rest to the pigs. Because that 90%, 100%, when the crypto goes up to that stage, that's when things are melting down. Exchanges are, being tested in terms of their capacity to manage the inflows and outflows and customer requests.
I made my own buy and sell strategy for Bitcoin.
Oh, good.
And based on the information, sort of. And I found that if I start following my plan now with like the little, I think I have like 1,000 in Bitcoin at the moment, but it's already 3x. So I only had like 300 at the beginning, and but I sold 2,000 before that happened. So that's oopsie.
It's a tough game.
But yeah, so I'm at the point now that I can start selling certain parts if I listen to my strategy.
Yep.
Because I think if I follow my strategy now when I have a bit of money, I can train myself to follow the strategy as well when the next cycle comes and when I buy more of it. So I can still sort of, I can rely that even if I'm irrational and I feel like emotional like about like how much money is it and it's going up and down, should I keep it? I can still follow the plan. Do you think that it's very important to know exactly when to buy and when to sell? Like what would you say is the most important thing to focus on in your buy and sell plan?
I don't know if I can say what's the most important thing, because ironically, I did one buy in 2014, and I did one good sell in 2021. And there was a bunch of smaller things that happened along the way. I think the most important thing is to have that accountability to the strategy, so that, as we mentioned before, when you're feeling that euphoria, the high of having realized all this money, that you do realize it and turn it into cash. But if you don't have that reliable strategy, like how do you know if your strategy's good? That's the issue. Like until you've tested it and been through a few market cycles, you just don't know. So there's a bit of unknown there. I feel like there's probably other things that, maybe reading Warren Buffett and things will find you, but that accountability to your plan, not diverging from the plan, is important. But then paradoxically, I think also recognizing when the plan is no longer sufficient. For example, at the moment, I don't know how true this is, but I just sort of look at the way that it seems the crypto community just unanimously expects that this halving in 2024 will turn into X amount of growth, and we'll all have this leisurely 12, 18-month period to sell on. But interestingly, Bitcoin hit an all-time high before the halving this time. So already like things are a little different to previous cycles. And I just wonder, is there a point where, like, if we all the possible people who could invest in crypto, if they are all currently invested in crypto, and then they're all telling themselves the same story that, oh, it's going to go up over the next 12, 18 months, and that's when I'm going to sell. Yeah, I just wonder how possible that is. Like, who are the buyers?
Yeah, especially at that price.
And
yeah.
But I'll add to that, and I'm sort of going off on a tangent here. But I do think like that narratives and things are important, and we have this inflation. Every cycle, there's always a different narrative around like why crypto is going to go up, and they often get disproven. Like I think the first one I really clocked onto is that 2017 one where it was like Bitcoin is going to replace money. Like cash is inferior compared to Bitcoin, all its use cases. Obviously that didn't happen. 2021, what were people saying? I think it was something to do with like it's a little life raft in a world where all this money is being printed to pay for the pandemic. This time, I'm not sure what the narrative is. Do you know what people say? Like, what's the story that people say, like why Bitcoin is destined to go up in the next few years?
What I've heard Robert Kiyosaki say a lot is like, because it's the one of the things that the government cannot make more of. So that's why it's an amazing investment.
Yeah.
But like I don't have too long skin in the game to like really make a statement here, but I what I think is because there are even more people now invested in Bitcoin because the bigger BlackRock having like NFTs now that you can buy, ETFs. So it's more easier to buy. I think the psychology of the human mind is gonna be a big part now because so many more people invested in Bitcoin that don't know maybe about cycles, like fluctuation of it. So when they get scared and they see it go down, I think because we're so irrational, it's going to even have a bigger impact on like the fluctuation.
Oh, you think there'll be more volatility?
Maybe because even more people that don't understand, like, what does it feel like when you have 70 grand in something and out of nowhere you have 35 less? Like,
yeah. See, my theory is that we've almost reached saturation of people that have the access to Bitcoin and have pulled the trigger and bought some. I think so many people went into the market in 2021, that maybe there's a little bit of a saturation factor. And I think there is a pattern of diminishing volatility. I think if you look at it through certain indicators over time, the return, the appreciation, and then the downturn is sort of tightening up. And that's a very common phenomenon across all markets. Is as an asset, is born and goes onto the market, has crazy volatility, and then sort of evens out, and the returns kind of start to diminish. So I don't think that there's no reason that you won't make lots of money, but I think always people look back to the last cycle and they're like, oh, it was a 10x last cycle, I'm going to make a 10x this cycle. But then it only comes to a 3x and people don't sell. I'm like, oh shit, well, I guess I'll wait for the next one.
That's what happens. Yeah. I think it's also a lot of the things we base on the past, we cannot really base anything on the past because it's so volatile. It's so like we don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen. But to recap on like everything you just said, so let me see if I get it right. So you went from like working a 9 to 5 in the IT, and you were able to box your time in a way that you could do some weeks that you could finish all your work in like less than over like 4 hours because you had everything in place through mentors and learning from other people. And you use the free time to learn more about crypto investing and how to like multiply your money, right? And you from there you because you started making more investments, or was it because in the beginning you already had in 2014 you made your first investment in?
Yep. And then I made subsequent investments, and some of them didn't go so well, others went really well.
Okay. And the turning, because can you please tell me again about what happened in 2017?
It's funny, like you read all these Think and Grow Rich books, and you get so fixated on the idea of being rich, and then when it happens, like you almost feel a little bit, there's some mixed feelings that come along, like a bit of guilt, a bit of like, oh, I don't want to, call myself a millionaire or whatever. So I'm grappling in myself. Do I like admit the figure that it was that I lost? Yeah, I can do that. So in 2017, I've had the crypto for a couple of years, and it's gone from what was $100 of my wage mowing lawns is now worth 7 figures. I could buy a house with that. At the time in 2017, I've just entered my career and I'm trying to make it. I thought things like apartments in a city and Range Rovers were all things that I needed to buy, and new surfboards or whatever. I could afford the new surfboard initially, and then once the crypto turned into $1 million, I was looking at money that I could afford to buy an apartment in the city or buy a Range Rover. The problem was that I'd lost the password. And because I was so immersed in the corporate world and really worried at the beginning of this job and career, like, am I doing a good enough job? Like, there's all this drama in the corporation. And I became so distracted by that I didn't look properly. And the password was there the whole time. But for many years, I wasn't able to find it. By the time I did find it, the market had well and truly tanked and it was over. And I was looking at, 10% of what I had seen on paper at the top of the market. And so I felt like a loser for a long time. I thought I'd blown it. This is 2017. There's only been 2 or 3 cycles. I wasn't sure it was ever going to come back. Most people were telling you it's done, it's not going to come back. So when it did come back, but I mean, in the time from 2017 to 2021, I had so much time to think about how I would sell. I'd be walking along the beach, where I eventually moved out of the city, went down the beach, and I'd just be walking down the beach, just seeing numbers. For years, I thought about selling. I just thought about all the different ways I could proportion out the sales and everything. And eventually on YouTube, I found that guy who had a much more rigorous way of approaching those sell orders than what I had. And so once I had that plan, I grabbed it by both horns. I finessed the spreadsheet of sales and I put them into the order book. I automated them. And then, as I said at the beginning, when you make the money, it comes easily, it comes quickly. And I just sat there at my computer during work hours. I'm supposed to be working on some project, but I'm watching like 5-figure sales just ticking off, tick, 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 as the market goes off. And it was really, in hindsight, quite a great thing that I didn't have my password in 2017 and spend all that money on Range Rovers and apartments, because by the time I was in 2021, I had a little family around me. My wife was pregnant. I had a little baby boy, and I was tired of being kicked around the rental market. So I went and bought them a home that we live in now. So yeah, it's like that parable of the farmer where, oh, I'm sorry this bad thing happened to you. Maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's so great this good thing happened to you. Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We never know. I really like this story. It's the ultimate way of just saying, like, you don't know if it's good or bad. Life just happens, and it's how we respond to it. And then and later, it just all turned out to be right.
And that's why I was really interested when you brought up faith earlier, because like faith has so many religious contexts. I've always been an atheist my whole life. I've always, been a very scientifically minded person, fascinated with science. I've never held much stock in religious ideas, but I went to a religious school, I went to a Christian school, and so I, on a weekly basis, prayed and went through the motions of the hymns and all that. And so I'm aware of the ideas, and I'm beginning to wonder: is there something incredibly valuable in religion, in having a faith that is beyond you? Because when we were talking about faith, we were talking about having faith in ourselves, our ability. That kind of faith is like a small little personal faith. But I kind of wonder about, and maybe have like faith envy. Like, wow, what about those guys who are going and they're putting themselves before God and saying, I have faith in this great power beyond me and above me. And though I'm doing all these things, there's a much greater thing above me. There's something very relieving to me about that idea.
I totally think so.
You think so?
I think so.
Interesting, because I haven't told anyone this before. In my circle, it's not very common. I don't have many religious friends. So.
Because I'm not religious at all, but I thank God.
Yeah.
I only use the word because I like saying thank you for something as well. Or something I pass water, I say, hey water, thank you for all the amazing things that happened in my life.
Oh, that's so Japanese. I love that idea.
But yeah, on a daily basis, I would really say thank you for the hard time learning. I need to go through all of this, and so I'm still, I don't know what I believe in, but I think just having something bigger I think that faith, creating that faith to trust in the bigger picture.
So earlier I asked you, what do you have absolute faith in? Do you have faith that there is a God?
I think that everything around us goes by sort of natural laws, and everything is created by one thing or another, and everything has a cause and effect. And I have faith that everything is built on cause and effect, and everything comes from a reason. So by knowing that everything is cause and effect, I know that for everything that I do, there is an equal outcome. And that gives a very, very good feeling.
Interesting. It's interesting to hear your answer to that, because I guess everyone has their different worldview about what's it all about. I read something in a book called Conversations with God. I think I read it there. And it was this idea that an ant colony sort of behaves as a single organism. It grows and dies and feeds itself and does all these amazing team coordinated things with a very basic amount of communication and no apparent central brain that says, now we're going to go get food. Okay, now everyone's going to go clean up. It's this sort of distributed intelligence, which is kind of interesting when you're talking in that crypto route about distributed networks and things. But an ant colony is kind of like a distributed network of consciousness. The ants don't share a mind, or maybe they do share a mind. Maybe that's the point, is that ants sort of share a mind, though there is no brain, big brain there like what we have. And so I wonder about, from this book, Conversation with God, I think it said something like, I read this a long time ago, but it just stuck in my mind, that we are sort of a composite consciousness. We are just a whole bunch of cells that happen to all work in perfect unison to create a single entity, James. And so I walk around feeling like an individual with consciousness and everything. But if you break me down at the cellular level, I've got all different tiny single cell organisms that are all working. And so I sort of think then, is there something above that, like at a planet level, where you have all the humans on Earth, all the animals on Earth, and then what's truly inconceivable is the totality of the universe and all the potentially conscious and unconscious stuff in the universe. And if you're looking for God in something that's like a conscious entity and a physical entity, it's not unheard of to have composite consciousnesses, a composite consciousness, which is one entity that's just comprised of lots of tiny little entities that make up one consciousness. I'm kind of rambling here, but there's things
No, I think you're getting very close. I think that is so close to what it is, I think. Especially because if you go down very small to like the atoms and a small little molecule to the big universe that we know, and then the correlation you made from like the ends just being not really individuals, but together, this whole amazing organized thing when they're together. So having that, seeing that the same way in like the whole of universe, maybe that's, so like at the level we're seeing it, it's not conscious, but the whole universe could even be, and even one universe could be the small part.
Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah. I think you got to keep these concepts like in your life somehow through whatever means to like to ground you and give you a bit of perspective, so you don't get overly concerned with what the market's doing today or whatever. You know?
Yeah, I really
where the
like
career's
that.
going. Like you just need some way to cleanse it. And so I wonder if being such in a society that's pretty secular society that isn't very religious anymore, I wonder if we've lost a bit there. Like we're missing sort of that religious component. I'm sure some people like they have a way of evoking it through meditation or mushroom trips or something like that.
I really like that almost everything, like religions, you see the same message being said with different words.
Oh yeah, what's
And this is an idea that I found, that I see the same thing being said almost everywhere, like in books, and there's just a lot of different correlations.
Yeah.
And when I was looking more at the message that's being said compared to the words that they're using to like translate this message to be understood. You don't have to get hung up about words that people use. Those ideas and like beliefs, and I think that everything happens for a reason. So nowadays, when there's a bit less belief, maybe in the future that turns into a whole new belief that's created that works for other people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes one word that I say isn't the right word to correlate with your brain. So I have to say something else to make it work. But that's why
I don't know much about that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Is there a message in particular that you've noticed across religions, or?
Like this idea of that we just talked about, of let's say the desire to do something.
Yeah.
Like that's in any belief. Like belief, even the power of belief, comes forth in all the scripts and all the different things.
Ask and you shall receive, that sort of thing in Christianity.
Oh, that too, yeah. But ask and you shall receive, I think that's very similar, because if you ask, that means you want it. And that's already your wanting showing. And that means you can get it. So it's like things like that. It's just you see it everywhere, and it's I find it very exciting to see the same message. Thanks, James. This was an amazing conversation.
Yeah, it was good fun.
It was really nice. Yeah. Nice and flow. All right, guys, this was James. Thank you for watching. On my channel, I make videos about anything that I learn about, like money or just life things in general. And I upload podcasts like this, just with people that have done amazing things and just people that I find interesting. So if you enjoy that, then join the Sandman community, and I'll see you next week.